slide? Thumbs up if you see the slide. Thank you. Okay. All right. So welcome to session number 2 of Civics 101 for the awesome Cycle 53 of the awesome IC Stars in Chicago. We are asking you to check your spam because you should have gotten an email like this. And that's our practice with this class. We send you a summary email a few days later with important points and some things that maybe people have raised, but we didn't have time to cover, and also a preview of the next session. So that's in your email coming from tom@trusser.com. All right, let's talk about your assignment. And this would be a good chance to raise any questions or uncertainties about what we're asking you to do for the last session, which is October 19th. So we're asking you to create a presentation based on your burning issue, which you articulated to your fellow interns last session. On this presentation will be 6 to 10 slides, something like that. The first one with your name and cycle number, your burning issue stated clearly. Images are good to help illustrate, help us understand what you're concerned about is great. But we need at least 2 slides with data on them to demonstrate the urgency of your issue. 1 slide to show the extent, the trend line, like what's going to happen if your issue is not addressed, right? So that could be some kind of a trend going up, some kind of sequence over time. There's lots of ways to dramatize and visualize that. And the second issue might be comparing the United States to other countries or something like that. So in other words, if it's bad in America, the thing that you're worried about, is this just an American thing or is it a global thing? So I leave it to you, 2 or 3 slides to help us understand what the issue is and how bad it is and where it's going. Find 3 groups working on this issue. 1 in Chicago that could be working on this issue in any way, but they must be here. 1 organization that deals with the policy aspect. So there's going to be laws and practices maybe coming out of your concern. And so is there an organization that's about changing the law, changing public opinion, that sort of thing. And then the 3rd group, wherever it is, has to be in the street, in your face, really militant and really doing great, exciting work around this issue. So 3 groups, and you might show screenshots of their website, put their URL in your presentation so your colleagues can go check them out if they wish to do so. But the main part of this presentation is your solution. Wow, how are we going to stop this thing? And this is where you get to be creative, and the sky's the limit. And you can take a few slides if you'd like, show images, and just help explain to your colleagues how do you think this issue should be solved. You have to do it all in 6 minutes. So I hope that you'll be able to practice, maybe run it through, maybe one of your colleagues, kind of practice with each other, because you'll be timed. And I know that people are going to get passionate. I know that this is an advanced group of IC Stars. And I know that once you've thought about this issue, you're going to want to really deliver some goods on it. But in fairness to your colleagues, we have to keep you at 6 minutes. Otherwise, we just won't get through it. We're going to ask an extra hour for the class. This is our last class, our 4th class. Okay. Any questions? This would be a great time. If you've got a question, probably others do. So go ahead and unmute and just fire away. Okay. All right. Well, if something occurs to you later during this session or later, you know where to reach me. Tom@trusser.com. It's easy to remember. And again, this will be due on the 4th session.
Sorry, I have a question. This is Mohammed.
Yes.
My question is, how long is the presentation time? Is it 5 minutes?
6.
6 minutes. Okay.
6 minutes. Yes, sir. Yes. Okay. If you're interested in chatting with me about any of the issues that we discuss in the class, or well, anything else really, I'm all ears. So just go ahead and reach out to me at either my email, or you can go to Calendly. I put that link into the chat. So basically, just click on that link and find a time, and we'll do a Zoom thing. And it's from now until the class is over. So if that's of interest to you, please check us out. So we spent a lot of time in the last session talking about this thing called public, and we used the case called pay to spray to bring up our feelings or our thoughts about this thing called public. And I'm wondering what happened after the class was over. Was this something that you all were talking about? Any thoughts? What do people think about that? Now that it's been a week later, I know there's been a lot of things going on in your lives, but any thoughts about the pay to spray? You can put it in the chat. You can unmute. Anybody change
For
their
the
mind? Go ahead.
case, I thought it was very informational. Like I didn't know anything about that. I didn't really look up any research afterwards, but during the presentation, how you explained it, it was very, it was something to be aware about. It made me like pay attention to my community too and look around like, dang, we don't have that going on. So they're facing that issue. I wonder how they're, fixing it. What are they doing to, actually provide, supplies and things to that, community to help. So that was
Yeah.
my takeaway.
Okay. And so were you persuaded one way or another that the firemen did what they should do, or how did you come down on this?
I mean, because I remember we was like to persuade, like, all right, they should do something about that. But after like we resuscitated the information, I was like, nah, it's not fair. Like, it was only $70 for the whole year to actually, pay for it. And, they could have saved up, they could have been more involved and showed that they weren't involved in the community themselves, like, because everybody else participated to do it. So it was all right, you singled yourself out and you didn't want to do it. And it's like, all right, this is what happens. And now you want to boo hoo and cry about it when you could have prevented that.
So let me understand. You think he should have paid the $75?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Other thoughts, reactions? Will you pay your $75? Did this thing, did the conversation make a connection? Okay, here's a comment. There should be a contingency plan to teach those who don't want to pay on how to handle the situations themselves. Okay, so in other words, keep a fire bucket by your door, or whatever, keep your hose on. But somebody has to be paid to even teach that class. I mean, somebody has to be paid to even do that much. So who, again, if you think a thing needs to be done in the body politic, and that's your value, and you have other people that agree with you, you got to find a way to pay for it. In other words, wishing doesn't make it so. Any other thoughts about this word public? Are you persuaded that there is such a thing as public? It should be on the tax. I would have paid. Anthony says, I would have paid it because you're in between places. So you're just covering your own butt, really. $75 is not that much in the scheme of things. But somebody said in last week, well, what if you don't have the $75? Well, the guy owned a house. He had pets. So, I'm not saying that he's poor or rich, but, he certainly had means. Any other thoughts or lessons that you might have taken from the discussion? Especially about the word responsibility.
Just, for going with the word responsibility after hearing the story, and like I said, we went through the agreements of yes and no. Like, just be on top of what your game. Like, you have a house. Like, a lot of people don't have that. You know what I'm saying? So I kind of feel like he knew the responsibilities. He just didn't prepare for it. He didn't want to get it done.
Okay.
And he could have, like, they came to him, they told him about the information, he knew about it, but it was like you wasn't responsible, to actually like go forth and like, all right, well, let me budget, let me save, let me put this to the side, let me make sure my house is good.
Yeah, it seems a little short-sighted. I mean, my guess is most people are paying their house off on a mortgage, right? So the person probably had a loan to the bank. Presumably he had a job so he could pay his mortgage and pay his expenses. He had 3 pets. Pets aren't cheap. If any of you have pets, they require money to feed them and they get sick. I don't know. I had a neighbor whose dog got sick. It was thousands of dollars of bills for this little dog, right? So when you have these animals, there's kind of like your family, So we can infer a lot about this gentleman just from the little things we know about him, from what the news reported. And it seems like he was not responsible. Seemed to me as if he was taking a lot for granted. And that's one of the points I'm trying to make here with this word public. When you're a member of the body politic and you choose to live in a certain place, that has certain responsibilities and duties. And go ahead.
I think the public is actually responsible for him. Like, everybody is responsible for each other in a way. And even though he had a house and he had pets that he could take care of, we don't know to what capacity he was able to take care of himself. Maybe he had a plan set up for emergencies. It just didn't work out. But we don't know. We don't know all of his story, and we don't know. How can I say this? We just don't.
That's true. We don't know a lot. Yeah.
Himself. Yeah.
But
I will.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I will say the government is responsible for that because the government know. So the population is not like 100 people or 200. It's like million people live in the United States. There are thousands of million people. They are facing mentally health issue or mentally problem too. So government knows all the people will not put the tax. All people, there's a lot of people, they are irresponsible in the state and they have a lot of other issues. So why the government should not take it on the taxes? Like, it's 20 cents a month. So if someone work for a company, there is a state tax, there is sales tax, there is a federal tax. So why the government should not take 20 cents from his paycheck? The government knows like billion people, irresponsible people live in the state. So why the state will not take 20 cents each check?
Okay, well, that's a great point. But the government is us. And so the government, in this case, it would be the county commissioners, would have had to been elected with that point of view. That, in other words, I'm running for county government of that area, and I say to my voters, you know what, everybody, I think everyone should have fire protection service. So everyone is going to get an extra 50 cents a year, or whatever it is, how many people in the county. And what if I'm not elected? So I have to convince my fellow voters of your point. If that's the way we're going to do it, which would be a perfectly good way to do it, I have to sell that to the voters. Or let's put it this way: if I just do it, if I'm the county commissioner and we just do it and we didn't ask you, in other words, we just did it anyway, you all could fire my ass the next time I ran for election. So it's the people in the county who are voting who are going to decide good idea or not a good idea. And that's part of this dance that we're talking about in civics. The government is us. by what we say to our representatives and what we demand of them based on our values, then you're going to get a law, or you're going to get that tax, that 50 cents a person tax, or you're not. But in the meantime, it is what it is. And so you could say that particular county in Tennessee wants to be lean and mean. They don't like to pay taxes over there. Okay, that's fine. Just live with the consequences. You can't have it both ways. That's one of the points I'm saying here. And I'm asking you to think about this dance between responsibility and that you have, and the services that you want and demand from your government. These two things.
I understand. I understand. I understand what you're saying. But I'm saying I did put a point over here. There is like a lot of people, they are mentally ill.
That's
Do you know what,
exactly.
I'm saying? They are not okay mentally. So what's the government responsibility there?
Well,
That's what I was trying.
okay.
Yeah.
So in other words, there's some people who really can't make the good decision about that. Well, this guy was not that. This guy was, I don't believe he fit in that category.
Just a one
He
case.
raised another point about people who need services who can't afford them. Right. So now
That's why I was
we're-
saying it should be a
we're
law,
kind of a
like the
related
federal,
area. Yeah, go ahead.
like federal taxes. It doesn't matter. They're gonna take your money anyway. If you work, they take out your money, right? I think it should be like a law is 20 cents. I don't think the basic people will be a hard time to paying 0.20 cent not covering up. It just should be a law, like for the federal government, how the government take out the taxes from the people. It should be like they're adding 20 cents for each. It should be a law, not asking people, what do you think, what I think. It should be the law, like the taxes is the law. You buy something, you pay for it.
Well, that's part of
That's
what
my
we're saying
consideration.
here.
I can be wrong.
If the people in the county want to provide a service, whatever it may be, we're talking about fire protection, but we could talk about mental health services. We could talk about health services, whatever the people think they want, and they feel that it should be provided to everyone, they must find a way to pay for it.
I just want to jump in real quick. So it's like just going back to the whole point of the situation. All right, cool. His house caught on fire, all that. But, was he really involved in the community? Did he actually look at his mail and like, look, we can help you pay for this? Did he actually even care about his neighbors and stuff? That plays a big role. And it's, we say we can't depend on the government, yet we do every day still. We still take our taxes, we still get refunds and stuff like that. So we do depend on the government. So it's like, all right, cool. It's lots of resources out here that'll help you. You could go outside and ask somebody, hey, I don't have enough for this. Do you know any places? There's so many people outside that you can talk to that will lead you to where you need to go. So it's like being responsible is understanding that you probably do need help. All right, let me be more responsible. If I ain't responsible enough, let me ask more help about it. Am I actually voting? Do I actually use my voter's registration card? Do I actually join, the committees in the neighborhood to understand or find ways? Like, so it's like, it's either selfish or you're actually trying to help. And if I feel like this person's more helpful, he would have got the help he needed. You feel me? He would have been more involved. So it's like all these, incidents and accidents and stuff like that is excuses. I could just relate to myself. I feel pretty sure we all can relate. If we use a link, you know what I'm saying? We rely on the government. How do we get that? We had to ask for help. We had to ask them, and we rely on it every day. All right, Medicare, stuff like that, healthcare, they can provide that as well. Are we actually using that and taking that advice? So it's like, it's so many resources out here to get help and to understand what's going on in the community, to the community to actually help. So it's like, all right, cool. Just saying too, if I came from a different country and I'm living in Illinois and I don't know nothing about it, what I'm gonna do? Okay, I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna have to ask for help. I'm gonna have to get some type of information and resources to actually utilize what I could do to make sure I maintain it and helping the community around me. So it's like that incident of his house being burnt down could have been prevented if he actually cared about his community and was responsible as a human being. So it's like, you got to play your part in wherever you're at. I don't think he's playing his part.
You got to play your part. Okay, thank you. There's so much in that, what you just said. I'm putting some of those things in the chat. You use the word selfish, you use the word responsibility, you use the word community, you use the word you got to play your part. And I think that's part of what I'm trying to gin up in this conversation about what it means to be a member of the public, to have a robust public sector that can take care of each other in good times and bad times. And part of it comes down to this idea of community. Am I in this am I just by myself, as you said, selfish, or is there some sense of we're together, that there's some kind of sense of community or responsibility to one another, even though I don't know you. That's very much part of this conversation about public. Now, that's a great way to transition into the main part of what I want to talk about, is this idea of civic engagement and what is civics. And so we're kind of, this really helps us get into the main part of the conversation this morning. So the first thing I would say is, in the world of civics that I like to talk about it, there's these three domains. We've already touched on the first one, that is called civic heart. What is your disposition? What's in your heart? And some words and qualities were already discussed last week and just now. Zachary had some great points. That was a great introduction to this topic right here. The second domain is the civic brain. What should you be knowing? What kind of facts? What kind of context should you be having in order to be a great change agent, a great person in civics, a great person to do social justice work? And the last domain is what we call civic muscle. What should you be able to do? Now, all these things you're doing in a way in IC Stars, and we'll try to make those points as we go along. So now we're going to divide up into small groups, using our Zoom tools. I'm going to put you into 4 rooms in a minute. And what I want you to do in your small groups is to discuss this thing called civic heart. So this thing called civic heart. What you want to be discussing is, what are the personality traits, personal traits, or let's say your state of mind, your mindset. What should be a mindset to be a great civic actor, the kind of civic leader that we value here at IC Stars? What kind of appetites or attitudes do you think is required to be a good civic change agent? And you've already mentioned a few of them. I'm not going to remind you, but you've already surfaced them. Okay. You'll get 10 minutes in your small groups. Please pick someone who'll be like a reporter to come back to us and tell us what you've discussed. And I want you to use the Jamboards. Now, some of you are on the road, so you may not be able to do this, but there's a Jamboard set up for you here. And it would be great if each group could go to this Jamboard. I'm putting it in the chat now. It looks like this. So here you go. Yeah, there it is. So you'll see it in a minute. There it is. So that's the Jamboard. There's 4 of them. So each group will find its own Jamboard. Please use your Jamboard and put the names of your members of the group into the yellow sticky. We'll repeat this exercise a little later in the class with a different Jamboard. All right. So here we go. Let's see if we can do this breakout room thingy here. All right. We're going to create 4 rooms. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Room 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Room 3. Right. Then 4. Okay. Everybody. All right. So please accept the invitation to go into your Zoom room. And then just begin the assignment. If you need a question, if you have a question, just drop out and I'll be here to answer. Okay, welcome back. Thank you for throwing yourself into that exercise. So what we'll do now is we'll ask one person from each of the 4 groups to report back and just share what they came up with. What are the attributes of a great civic heart? Let's start with group 1. Somebody please from group 1.
Okay, I'll go. Some feedback there, sorry. All right, so for team 1, it was oh, let me put my camera on, sorry. So for team 1, it was myself, Nawaz, Jarvel, David, Zach, and Victoria. We said that some traits or some personality traits that we think would entail or create a good civic change agent would be someone who's empathetic, reliable, honest, a critical thinker, being motivated, having that type of hunger that drives them, a team player, smart, let's see, and again, going back to the empathy, so just like being a loving person, being relatable. Yes.
And so why that one? Why a loving person?
I can't hear you, Tom.
Why a loving person? No?
Your mic.
No?
Oh, there we go. Sorry.
Yeah. Why loving? Why did that show up? Oh, you're muted.
Just because it was mute, just to add on to what Anai was saying. I feel like a loving person because it's like if you don't have that care in your heart, you know what I'm saying? Like if you don't actually like love, like how could you actually like be genuine with actually like being civil about anything? Like you have to love it. You have to love what you're doing. You have to have some form of love in you. That's empathy at its finest.
Awesome. Yeah. So reliable and honest. So what's a token of someone who's reliable? I mean, that's a great word. So how do you know someone is reliable?
I would say, being there, like that's the number one thing. Like, all right, are they reliable? Can they be there? Are they there? Are they active? Like, all right, cool. I know that this person helped me before out of the blue, and they were there for me. So that's being reliable. Or they could really give me information that all right, cool. Like they really helped me out. That's reliable. Like I needed that. I can use them. I can
Okay, so it's
ask them
next
things.
words. So someone says,
Yeah.
hey, Zach, I want to help you, brother. You look glum. You don't look happy. They talk to you, and then when you say, actually, yeah, Tom, could I borrow $10 to get home? Or hey, Tom, you got a minute? I want to maybe talk over a problem with you. And then I go, oh no, I'm sorry, I gotta get my hair washed, or something. In other words, I just say words to you.
Yeah, you're not there.
But
like
right, and so
in the moment.
So and I think there's another aspect of what you're saying is consistent. It's not just when I feel like it, but but if I'm offering to be of service or help to you and you call me on it, I'm saying, okay, you know what? I was going to do something. I was going to wash my hair, but I'm going to sit down and hear you out. And I do that every time. So this idea of not just one time, but consistently, I hear, is something that's important in this world. Okay.
Correct.
Let's go to group 2. What do you got?
So for the group 2, so we have myself, Mohammed Wakar, and I have Graham Livermore, and then I also have Anthony C. and Jose Rivera. So we think the mindset he should have, the first one is a service orientation. So civic leaders should have a strong sense of public service. So he can prioritize the needs of the community. So when he has that mindset, he can address those issues.
Oh,
And the second thing, he needs to be a problem solver. So everybody can see the challenges in the community or around the people, but he has to come up with a solution. So he needs to overcome the challenges so he can address those challenges for the community. And at the traits, the first one is the empathy. So empathy is really crucial for the leader, because he needs to understand the concern of the community. I have seen the people who are living in the higher level, and they cannot understand the needs of the local community. But in order to address being a good traits, he needs to understand the needs and concern of the local community. And the second traits, he should have integrity. So he can be honest. So he's doing what he's supposed to be. He needs to do what, even though somebody is not around them. So I think that's the big thing he should have.
Wow. Oh man, those are awesome. Really fantastic. I could spend all day on just this last one, but back again, let's just notice empathy is showing up again. I'm going to predict this is something that's going to come up several times, and I think you guys you're really zeroing in on something crucial here. But the first thing you said was to serve. So what happens when I serve you, Mohammed? If I'm going to serve you, what am I doing?
So for example, in the community, let's take my example. And I know I am facing a couple of the issues in my community, but there is no one around me who can speak on the behalf of the community. So we need at least someone who can speak on behalf of the people, because not everyone can speak. So at least the civic leader should be able to speak on the behalf of the community. And also at the same time, and if we are facing some challenges, so at least he can speak on those challenges as well. He can address those issues. So having the service orientation mindset, he always prioritize the needs of the community first, instead of having the personal needs. So I think that mindset needs to have it's good to have for the civic
Okay, you got it there. The needs of the community over personal.
Right.
And I think you mentioned that an honesty. So if I'm stealing from the community, obviously I'm disqualified. If I'm just trying to get my brother hired for work, right? If I'm just trying to, or as I say, line my own pockets, however I'm doing it, we don't like that. That's not what we're talking about here. Now it sounds simple, but it bears repeating, because look what just happened in the United States Congress. I don't even want to go there. We'll never get past anything in this class if we dwell on national politics. If that's something you want to talk about, please set up an appointment and we can talk about what's going on in our country. But I would just say this: regardless of whether you're a Democrat, Independent, or Republican, or you have no affiliation, the level of service at a lot of politicians, not just in Washington, but here in Chicago, is dismal, Mohammed. And I would say that a lot of times we see people who are caught stealing, frankly. I mean, so in Chicago, aldermen, we've had 35 aldermen go to prison since 1973. So, you know, it's a high crime area. People talk about your community as being a high crime area. No, the highest crime area is actually city council, sadly. And so they are not listening to you. I mean, there's some leaders in city council who are quite good, and I love them a lot, but there's a lot who are not following what group 2 has laid out, which are wonderful things. Okay, awesome stuff. Let's have group 3 now, please. What do we have from group 3, please?
There we go. So I was on the group with Cecilia, Talicia, Leon, and Jaleel. And we came up with just this list of qualities. We believe that someone who has a civic heart uses compassion, communicates very well, uses empathy, stands up for what they believe in, displays respect for others, is willing to assist others, is open-minded, uses integrity, is ethical, honest, willing to fight for their cause or their people, is community-centered or community-focused, and has a long-term vision, is patient, and is hungry for change.
Oh, I like that last one. Talk about that last one. What's a long-term vision look like? How do we know if someone has a vision?
How do we know if someone has a vision?
Yeah.
Well, I think they're able to communicate that vision. So going back to what was already said, they're able to listen to the needs of their people and then come up with a plan to tackle any of the issues, and then is able to verbalize it, is able to communicate that clearly.
Right. And would you agree with me that a vision is going to inspire you? Right? The vision should inspire you. It's not boring.
Yes.
It would get me up off my seat, because I'm hearing the leader articulating, as Muhammad and his group said, you're reflecting my concerns. You know what's wrong. You know, you're from us. You're from the community. So the things you're speaking about are real to me. I'm living them. You're not speaking nonsense to me. You're speaking because you know that there's an issue in our community, whatever it is. It could be crime. It could be no water. You know, the water is crappy. It could be the school is not doing its job, or whatever the issue is that you're aware of, and you're speaking to it powerfully. And I hear you, Atticus, and I go, oh, you're talking to me. You're talking to me because you've heard me, you've seen me, and you care about me. You care about me, and I want to hear more. Tell me more. You know, I'm gonna come up out of my chair and go to the meeting. Because you're gonna say, we're gonna have a meeting over at the ABC Church, and we're gonna talk about this thing, y'all. Come on over, and we will put our heads together. And now we'll get to work. And so what has happened in that moment is I listen to you and I go, oh, that guy's a leader. I'm going to listen to him, and I will come to that meeting and I will hear what you have to say, right? That's the kind of
I guess
we like. Does that make sense?
So I guess yeah, the ability to inspire, but then also seeing the value of like planting that seed in others so that they can go out and be leaders as well.
Oh boy, that's a big one. Plant the seed in others. That's huge, my friend. Yes. So part of the leadership model that we are going to be talking about, servant leadership, is very much this idea of being a servant and a leader at the same time, which sounds perhaps contradictory, but I think you all understand that it is not contradictory. Also, it has to do with, can you be a leader too? My job in this world of leadership is to do the things that you've already articulated, care for others, have a vision, find a way to put a plan together. Someone said a plan. We're not just sitting around, complaining idly, but we're going to move with purpose, right? That's a plan. But it also has to figure out a way to make you a leader too. So if you show up at the meeting that we're discussing this issue, I'm keeping my eyes open and I'm thinking to myself, that guy Atticus, he spoke very powerfully. Maybe they should be a leader too. So I'm going to embrace you. I want you to bring your chops. And that's the kind of model that we like. Basically, that assumes that anyone can lead. Do we believe this?
Yep.
We believe that anyone can lead. Martin Luther King said, to be a leader, you don't have to have a PhD. You don't have to make your article, your predicate rhyme with your, speak like a professor. You just have to have a heart of a servant. That's what Martin Luther King said. Okay, these are excellent points. Group 4, what do you got? I think that would be it.
On our team we had Nathan. Can you hear me? We had Nathan, Grant, Leslie, and Jonathan. And the words we came up with was reasonable, responsible, disciplined, empathetic, honest, caring, genuine, passionate, and a critical thinker.
Gotcha.
And some other ones.
Critical thinker, yeah. This has come up a couple of times. What is a mark of a critical thinker to you, Kennedy? How do you know you're talking to a critical thinker?
Someone that just, takes their time and doesn't rush like the thought process, takes their time and, breaks it down process step by step and, comes out with a solution. That's my sight on how a critical thinker would behave.
I used to teach a class called Who's Lying to You Now? A class on critical thinking and media literacy. So a show of hands, who believes they're being lied to weekly? Being lied to weekly by whoever, media, the press, religion, commercial, yeah. The question is, how do you know you're being lied to? A great author was once asked years ago, what is the job of an author? What is the job of a great educator? And the response was to give students a bullshit detector.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a BS detector? And I'm afraid that America is not really great there. We're lied to, the media and the internet, I think, are really to blame here. And you all going into technology, you're technologists. This is a big issue for you to consider as you move forward, especially with AI now. Everyone's talking about AI. I saw a movie last night called The Creator. Oh my God, what a movie. Blows me away. It's another of these movies that are discussing the future of technology. And is it too much? Where are we going with it? And it's going to be even more important for people in the technology field to have your own built-in bullshit detector, so that you can sort out truth from lies reliably on your own. Because if you're going to be building products and in this technology space, you need to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. So yes, critical thinker, I would say, is an overlooked skill of our leaders. And oftentimes they're part of the problem. They're not giving us good information. They're giving us misinformation. They're leading in an improper manner. And in my work, I do a lot of research in journalism and a lot of research, and I share it with the community. And that's part of how I roll. If I do research on an issue, I share it with people. I want people to know as much as they can know, so that collectively we can make a good decision. Also, you mentioned passionate. Why passion? What's that about?
With passion, you just gotta have a drive in anything that you want to do. Like if someone's not passionate, they don't really put their all and their entire spirit into that activity.
Right.
So, yeah.
So that's one of my favorite words, actually. And again,
Passionate.
it's kind of an art and science word. Like, what is passion? How do you measure it? You certainly know somebody who has it, right? And I think it's a part of a leader, because it has to do with a few other words that people were mentioned, like hard fighting, fight for the cause, don't give up, I think someone said persistent or consistent. And one of the qualities of a change agent is to do something that seems to be impossible, right? It seems to be like, why are you bucking the trend? Why are you fighting the man? Why are you saying no where everyone else is saying yes? Why are you persisting to help to do things? It seems like an impossible dream. And the passionate change agent will say, well, it's in my heart. I have to do it. I'm called to do it. And has that spirit about them that makes them walk through walls. So you probably know people in your lives who have done the impossible, maybe for you and for your community, where they just don't stop. And where do they get the energy from? Where do they get the heart from? It's a mystery, actually, but it's not something that we can necessarily teach you, like how to be passionate. You are, you aren't. Best that we can do is to show you different things. You read different things, you meet different people, right? You're exposed to different situations, and you find someone who goes, oh, I'm going to be like that guy. I'm going to be like her. I'm going to be. And sometimes we find models, and we sort of suck up their passion, or their passion, drapes on us or drenches us, and we just get lifted. And next thing you know, we're passionate, like, right? And so you could be one of those people who are just naturally super full of energy, right? And you could be one of the quiet ones who are sort of waiting, and your moment hasn't come yet, right? But I do agree with you and your group, Kennedy, that passion, as hard as it is to quantify, is part of this mystery of leadership. Oh, wonderful. Now let's just, before we go into the break, let's just have a conversation. People can just put into the chat or shout out, what is, and it's hard to call it here, what is the most important aspect of civic heart? In other words, if you only had one trait or one of these many, many wonderful qualities that we've discussed today, what's the number one? If you had to choose, the number one thing that you would want for yourself or your other leaders for their civic heart.
Integrity.
Integrity. Okay, cool. Otherwise, it's all for nothing, right? If someone is not honest, if they're dishonest. Cool. Love, someone put in love. Thank you. Civic love. Empathy. Again, we hear this word empathy. The quality of service. So again, in order to serve, I think you're back to that. The service is the manifestation of the quality. And I would suggest that this idea of, in order to serve, you first must care. You agree? So if we're trying to break it down to like the elements, like atomic elements, that air is made, water is made of oxygen and hydrogen, like the elements of it, if you want to think of it this way. I think for me, it comes down to this idea of the caring. People are saying empathy. I think that's a great word. And I think some of you have described, when we talked about how do you know someone is empathetic? It's like, well, can you see the world through my eyes? Can you walk in my shoes? Can you understand at an emotional level, not an intellectual level? Can you understand what I'm going through and give a crap? These are different ways to talk about empathy. And can I make you be empathetic? Can I force you to be empathetic? People are nodding their head no. I would say no. You can model empathy. You can give people empathy even if they're not empathetic to you, right? You can care more about someone maybe than they care about you, but you really can't make someone be generous, right? And someone says, nah, everyone's selfish. Well, that could be true at any given point, but I've experienced both, right? And I'm going to say the evidence of caring and concern is proof of icy stars. You're cycle 53. That means there were 52 cycles before you, my friends, because someone cared. You are experiencing the the proof of the pudding. You are living it right this minute by being in IC Stars. There's a whole bunch of people who care about you before they even knew you, right? And now, of course, they know you and they care about you and they want you to succeed. It's very important that you succeed and do well, right? And that is a thing that was created by Sandy and her colleagues, wasn't it not? So I would say that's an evidence of somebody caring deeply. Right. And then someone says, I didn't have empathy until life humbled me. Now that is a very true and bold thing to say and share. Life can knock us around, can it? And it can deal us a lot of hard cards. And it could be that a lot of us don't think there's a lot of love in the world until we experience it. So part of our job as the leaders, as civic leaders, I'm going to suggest to us, is to create the conditions of more civic love. We need to have more civic love. Now that's just me, you know, I mean, that's my philosophy, you know, and that I'm here with you sharing it. But I think listening to your conversations and reflecting on your experience at IC Stars, I think we can perhaps agree that that is a foundational element of civics, right? Without that, really everything else doesn't matter. If you vote, you don't vote. What difference does it make if you don't care about your community? If you don't have that civic love that I think you guys have said several times is very important. Okay, let us now take a 5-minute break. It's 10:38. So let us reconvene at 10:40. Let's call 10:45, okay? Let's reconvene at 10:45, and then we'll continue on with the discussion of leadership. And so be prepared to share with your colleagues who, in your opinion, is a great leader when we reconvene. Okay, see you in 5. Okay, as our session resumes, we're asking for people to put into the chat the name of someone who they believe is a leader and to say why. Khan says someone who thinks for a better future. Back to that vision thing, something in their brains. I see something that isn't around right this now. We're trying to move towards that better place.
When you say leader, do you mean a good leader or just viewed as a leader?
I would say someone who you think is a good leader.
Okay, thank you.
That's a grandpa. So why did you put grandpa? Why grandpa?
Hey, yeah, so I put down my grandfather because he's a good leader because in general, I've always looked up to him, but he is of service to his community. So he grew up in Pilsen and he's always been involved in the neighborhood. He's a muralist, so sometimes he creates art, you know, for profit, but most of the time he creates art for others, like for free. And he's a good leader because he's extremely helpful to others. He's empathetic and he's always looking for ways to just be of service to people, even if he doesn't know them.
Okay, super. We should all have someone like that in our lives. Other people, names of leaders, good leaders. As we come back into the session here. Everybody should be getting back. Names of people that you think are a good leader. Sandy, okay. Well, he's someone who's right in front of us. I've sort of sung her praises, but why Sandy? What's going on
I
with
think
her?
Sandy she saw a problem within the like community she was in prior to this because she was a teacher and she saw the problem in education. And instead of just like she was already a teacher. She could have left that for the policymakers and voted like, yeah, I want to change. I picked the policy, but she chose to make the change herself. She chose to sit down and talk about it every day and create this idea, and she's actually doing it. And I'm a product of her great leadership, and I hope I can make her proud in my endeavors.
Oh, that's beautiful. I mean, that's an example of everything we're talking about. Someone who is modeling a good behavior, who inspires you, who is actually helping you. And then you go, well, maybe I like to somehow, how can I be a Sandy in my life? What, can we all be Sandys? I don't know, maybe. But you said something very, very powerful. She could have left it to the policymakers. In other words, it's not my problem. I see the problem, but it's not my problem. So she made it her problem. And that's, to me, I guess, at the heart of this whole matter. Who was Sandy to do that? Was she anybody special? You said she was a teacher. I actually hired her 30 years ago. She worked for me.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I had a community arts program in Uptown in Rogers Park. I worked with a bunch of artists. I hired them, and they were teaching and training and doing things in the West Rogers Park community that combined arts and economic development. She was one of my teaching artists. But again, in I guess the magic of America and the mystery of America, the tragedy of America, I guess you could all say, is you don't have to be anybody to do anything. I mean, you could say, did Sandy have a PhD? No. Was she like the daughter of a big important person? Was she very personally wealthy? I mean, these are things that we kind of maybe just assume that leaders are. Was she a white man? No. Like all these things that maybe we think that's what a leader looks like, right? But she said, I'm not going to leave it up to anybody. And so she did what I call you make the path by walking it. If it was easy, she would have just gone to the manual, how to get people of color into technology, how to get women of color into technology, how to get people who have been overlooked and sandblasted by the system. How do we get them into leadership positions? There was no book on that. There wasn't like, here, pull this lever and apply solution. She made it. She made the solution. Now I see stars coming into its 30 plus year now in multiple cities. It itself is now an example around the world. So when people are confronting the same situation that Sandy confronted all those years ago, they don't have to look very far for a solution, do they? They just come over and check you guys out and go, oh, okay, I'm going to make one of those. I'm going to do what Sandy did, in my own way. And actually, that is what happened. All right. I think that's sufficient. I think we could spend a lot of time. People could be sharing other things. If you want to drop into the chat as we continue names of leaders, that would be appreciated. But let's move on now and discuss something called servant leadership. So this is the model of leadership that we are following here, that I believe in, that says, in order to be a leader, you first must want to serve. Let me repeat that. The true mark of a leader is someone who has the heart to serve. That's the first test. Not that I want to be the general, not that I want to make a lot of money, not that I want to lord it over you and tell Leslie what to do and push that person around or, be a big boss. That's not what we mean by a good leader in our world. The world that we subscribe to says the leader that we like wants to serve first. All right, so let's watch a brief video of Archbishop Desmond Tutu, winner of the Nobel Prize, when he's asked this question about leadership. All right, so can you see the screen now? Thumbs up if you see the screen.
What, in your opinion, makes a good leader? What qualities?
Yes. It's a question that we've had to deal with quite a bit looking at some of the leaders we have had who have sometimes led their countries into disastrous situations, I think ultimately you want a leader who is also a servant. I mean, really, the leader is a leader because he is a servant. I mean, you look at some of the greatest leaders. Nelson Mandela is someone who is not in it for his own aggrandizement. He leads on behalf of, for the sake of. That is one. And it almost always is that the great leader will show just how he is or she is a leader for the sake of the land by suffering.
A person who is a servant as well. That is
Yeah.
that is the ultimate.
For me, yes, that you are not one who is seeking self-glorification, who wants to feather his nest. Just look, say at I mean, you can look at Mother Teresa or any, I mean, Mahatma Gandhi, the Dalai Lama. You'll see that a great characteristic is they are doing something, sacrificial in a way for the sake of those they are serving, and suffering. Well, the Dalai Lama has been in exile for 50 years. Nelson Mandela was in jail. Mother Teresa lives with the poor. She lived with the poor. Mahatma Gandhi, you could go on. Martin Luther King. And then the great leader is someone who is inspiring, inspires his followers, her followers. Aung San Suu Kyi. I mean, she said nothing very much for 11 years, and yet she remains the only real leader in Burma. Why? That somehow the leader encapsulates and somehow represents the best that is in the people, the aspirations of the people, and yes, it is someone who can inspire.
Okay. Someone who can inspire, says Archbishop Desmond Tutu. What do you think about that? I think he made a lot of the points that you all have made. Reactions? What do you think of Mr. Tutu and his take on leadership?
I 100% agree with him.
100%. Why? What really stuck out?
Like I lost myself in this whole conversation, but the sacrifice part, like it is a sacrifice because there's so many things that we can decide to do for ourselves that we feel are more important or prioritized. But it may seem as a sacrifice to some people, and to some people it is a sacrifice, and that just makes it that much greater.
Yes, there is an element. Now, we're all not going to be Archbishop Tutu or Mahatma Gandhi or the Dalai Lama. That's not what I'm trying to say here. But to a degree, to be the kind of leader that we are talking about, you are giving up something, even if it's time with your family, which is something you're giving up. I'm not asking you to go to jail. I'm not asking you to give up your life. That's not what we're talking about. We're not playing at that level here. But even even to be a modest leader, to help your community, you are giving up your time. You are sacrificing. You could be with your family. You could be making money. You could be playing with your dog. You know what I mean? You know, collecting stamps, doing the thing that you love to do, you know, cooking, whatever. But there is a reward, which is the other part of this work. There is, it's not to say that it is not rewarding, not money reward, but to serve is also to be rewarded. Can you follow me there? Would you agree, Jonathan?
Well, um, so it does feel rewarding when you see that you've made a change. So I guess in that way, yeah, it's rewarding. I don't know about, I just, can you, do you mean like rewarding as in financially rewarding or just
No.
emotionally?
You're nourished. You're nourished.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally
So-
agree with that.
so rewarding maybe is not exactly the best word. You are nourished. Let's call it that. And that is not enough for some people. Some people say, "Show me the money." I'm not, you know, and that doesn't make you a bad person. We're talking about a certain kind of leadership here. So it is, you know, we are coming down heavy on that, on those values, Jonathan. So yes. Any other thoughts or reactions to Archbishop? Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I've been in positions where like I've only had a couple of dollars left, and I know I needed them for like I was on my way to get something specific, and just that feeling that you help somebody else. I seen someone that needed it more, just to pass that along. That was a small act of kindness, but that's the kind of reward, the same reward that I would feel if I were to impact the whole generation or become one of those great leaders. I think that would definitely nourish me. Just that feeling alone, just helping people, and it's a feeling you can't get doing anything else.
I agree. And again, it's not something I can teach you in business school. It's not something that can be, you know, you can, but it's part of our, but I would say, Jonathan, it's part of our human nature. It's maybe not part of human nature that we like to, that isn't rewarded so much in our culture. But, you know, capitalism is only a couple hundred years old. Let's just put it that way. So this idea of the marketplace, you give me something and I give you some money, you know what I mean? You know, all this thing about being an exchange, being a customer, customers. The idea of a customer is fairly new in our evolution. But the idea of being citizens or members of community goes back hundreds of thousands of years. In tribal societies and indigenous societies, to this day, there are cultures that don't have the marketplace. They don't think necessarily, you know, my labor is worth $50 an hour, and if you don't pay me 50, you know what I mean? It's not that way for a lot of cultures, even to this present time. So a very important thing about what is rewarding, you know, who gets to reward who for what is a very important point that we could probably spend the rest of our time together just breaking that down. All right, let me share now with you some of the qualities of what we call servant leadership. Again, this is a model that I subscribe to, and it's a discipline that's maybe about 40 years old. It's been around for a long time, maybe not by this word. People might have said many prophets, you know, of ancient times lived according to these rules, and the scriptures of various faiths actually preach this kind of leadership. But we say, can you see the screen that says what is leadership? Thumbs up if you see it. Okay. All right. Servant leadership has 7 qualities. The first one is being a person of character. And the second is being puts people first. So those two are related. So we mentioned a person of character could be an honest person, has integrity, does what they say, right? Shows up for people. These are things that you've said. We call that being a person of character. Next one is puts people first. That's self-explanatory. Do you have that sense of community? Do you have the sense of service? Skilled communicator. Several of you have mentioned that. It's not enough to think to have a vision. How can you communicate that vision? How can I show you? How can I talk to you? How can I move you along? How can I listen and also articulate my vision? So being a communicator is 2 ways. not just talk, but I have to listen. So there's something called deep listening, and we could have a whole class just on how to be a good listener. Has foresight. Now, this again, someone said creativity. How do you see the future? So to be a strategic thinker is something that we would I think is part of being a servant leader. Unfortunately, I don't have time to go into all this in depth. I used to teach a whole class just on this. But you can imagine, in order to have a plan, I think some of you said have a plan. You can imagine what would it take to have a plan for your community. That involves doing research, listening to people, getting data, going out into the community, measuring, thinking, reading, and then having a strategy. What comes before what? If you're going to clean up your neighborhood and clean up, say, a dirty block or some vacant lot that's full of trash, that's your vision. I'm going to turn that into a garden. To get to the place where the garden is actually functioning, that is a strategic plan. How are you going to do it? Compassionate collaborator, that speaks for itself. You guys are doing teamwork a lot now, in your assignments for IC Stars. So think about the teams that you're on. If you should be the leader of that team, or are you a member of the team? How do you be a great team member? Think about the teams you've been on where they suck, where someone shows up and it just doesn't fire, it just doesn't work, where people are unprepared, where people needlessly argumentative, where people are letting their egos getting in the way of the group effort. Someone couldn't put their ego aside and said, you know what? It's not about me. What do you think, team? I'll go with the team, right? So think about you being a great team member. I say be over-prepared. Show up and be the person that everybody wants on their team. I want that guy Tom on my team. He came, he had cupcakes. He came with pencils for everybody. He not only did the research, but he did extra research, and I learned from that. I want Tom on my team. You be that person. Be that person that everyone wants, not the one that they want. They said, don't put Jonathan on your team. He's a schmagegi. He never shows up. He's always chewing gum. Don't be that guy. You know what I mean? So that's what it means to be a compassionate collaborator. And again, compassionate is again a part of our thinking. You're someone who's not there just to you want to. It's important to you. You want the team to succeed, and that kind of it catches. You know what I mean? If you're on a team with somebody who's got that kind of energy, it's like, wow, we're going to get our job done 50 times faster than the other guys who are moping and complaining and can't get their shit together. This is fun. It's kind of fun. I want to be on this team. All right, a systems thinker. People mentioned thinking holistically. Again, the kind of leader that we're thinking about has that 50,000 foot altitude point of view. And that's not everybody. Not everybody can get there. But in order to be the kind of leader we want, we require you to step above where you are and to look around. Like, how did we get here? How did Chicago get here? How did America get this way? How come my community looks the way it does? That's part of being a systems thinker. And finally, you lead with moral authority. The leadership that we want, we actually choose our leaders. So the kind of leaders that we're talking about, the leadership is granted to us by our followers. So the word follower is a word that we don't normally think about in this discipline, but the role of the follower is super important in this work. So the servant leader leads because he or she has earned it. And everybody around them in the situation agrees to be led. So it doesn't mean you're the general and I have to follow you because I'm a sergeant. It doesn't mean you're a PhD and I have to follow you because I don't have my college degree. It doesn't mean I follow you because you're the millionaire and I'm just a person with a few bucks. It means I follow you because you're worth following. Okay? And that's an amazing thing to think about. It means that everybody on this Zoom call is a leader, can lead, has led, and will lead. So that's a little bit about servant leadership. Now, with our time remaining, we want to talk about the next domain, which is the civic brain. So I'm going to send you back into small groups in a minute. This time, your assignment is to think a little bit differently about kind of like knowledge? What's the kind of stuff a person in this world that we're speaking of, civic engagement, social justice, social change, what kind of stuff ought they know? And I'm looking for responses around stuff you should know, skills that you should have, and any kind of context. Like I've referenced this, the big picture. Let's call it the big picture. What kind of big picture knowledge should be included in the civic brain domain? All right, let's break you up into the small groups and begin our assignments. I will just keep everyone in the same rooms, which seem to work out all right. And we'll give you 10 minutes for this exercise. All right, the rooms are open. Please join them. Thank you. Okay, thank you again for doing that small group work. The topic at hand is the civic brain. What needs to be in that civic brain? So let's start with group 4 this time. What do you got? What should be in the civic brain, group 4?
We thought that being aware of the resources in the community, finding trust within people in the community, understanding different perspectives, awareness of the history, communication, and the ability to put yourself in the shoes of others were really important with the civic brain.
Oh, okay, that went by really fast, Leslie. Can you slow it down? I heard community, being aware of the history. What else was in there?
Finding trust within people, understanding different perspectives within communities or groups of people, awareness of the resources that might already exist inside the community to help your cause, being able to effectively communicate and having the ability to put yourself in the shoes of others.
Got it. So being aware of the resources in the community is a fascinating example. It's what we call asset-based community development. And so the notion is that every community is full of treasure. A lot of times our communities are told to be full of problems, which means that the people in our communities are full of problems. You know, you have a lot of hunger in your community or crime or whatever. So that's all we hear a lot of times is our communities have problems, which means the people are problematic. But another way of looking at it is that community is full of treasure. It has a lot of things in it. So it makes me think like, how would we find that treasure? How would we undertake, Leslie, to discover the assets? What activities could you and a small group of people actually do?
I guess taking the opportunity to get to really understand the community, like the day-to-day life of people that are within it. Communication could also come into play with that, and seeing how others within that community might already be working towards the cause that you're trying to do as well, and then
Right. So you got to get out and ask. So you've got to become a journalist in a way. You've got to go on, just ask. So you've got to meet people. So you would think about, well, who would be the people I would meet? I got to meet the pastors. I got to meet the store owners. I got to meet the school teacher. I got to meet the gang leaders, maybe. I've got to meet Mrs. Jones, who has the community garden. She always got kids around her. What's going on with Mrs. Jones? She seems to be everybody's auntie. She seems to know everybody. I got to go talk to Mrs. Jones. So you got to get up off your seat and go out and collect information. Now, could you also look online and find out things like, household income and, that kind of stuff? Right? Okay.
Yeah, definitely could.
Cool. Okay. So again, being aware of the history, you can ask people to tell their story. That's one way to get a history. So there's the history that's written down. So say you lived in, Lincoln Park, I mean, there's a book that's been written about Lincoln Park, or other communities, right? There's histories of Chicago, but we're talking about, the neighborhood. So there may not be a written history of where you happen to live, like I can go to the library. So maybe I'm looking at the newspapers, like I'm reading the local newspaper. That's kind of a way, to look at the history. But maybe another way is just to go out and ask. I'm just going to interview some people and get their history. So this guy lived here for 30 years. This pastor was the head of the church for 40 years. This person owned a shoe store for 20 years. This guy was fixing cars in the garage. He doesn't even have a garage. He's just fixing cars out in the middle. He's kind of one of those entrepreneurs. I'll ask them, how did you move here? What happened? How long you lived here? That's one way too. Okay. What about, okay, well, let's, before I ask questions, let's go on to a group 3. It's a good start. Group 3, what do you got?
So we have adaptability, quick thinking, the ability to see themselves in others. They should know how to build trust. They should know what they don't know and then seek knowledge. They should be resilient, knowledgeable about politics and all viewpoints regarding their sector, even the opposing opinions.
Oh, know about the political system.
Mm-hmm.
All views. So that's a little history, right? There's a Democratic Party and there's a Republican Party. So how do people vote in your community? Do you know that? What is the voter registration? Who are the leaders? Do you know who? Do we know who our elected reps are? So show of hands, if everyone knows who their local elected official is, like the alderman or city councilman.
No.
No. How about your state senator, your state representative? No.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, somebody raise their hand. United States Senator, there's 2. Do you know who they are? United States Senator? No. President of the United States? You know who that guy is? Vice President of the United States, black woman, first black woman, vice president. Everybody knows Kamala Harris. So that tends to be the case. We kind of know the people at the top of the food chain because they're in the news all the time. But actually, the people who control our lives on a day-to-day basis ain't those people. Yes, they're very important, no doubt. But the people who actually impact our lives down here at the street level, it'd be someone like your councilman. It'd be like your county commissioner. And then your state rep, your state senator, they're important. But a lot happens physically where you live. So who's your mayor? We know who our mayor is, right? You know who the mayor of the city of Chicago is? Raise your hand if you know who the mayor is. Okay. All right. Well, there's some people who don't know that. This stuff is critical. It's basic block and tackling. In order to be effective in civics, you got to know who the players are. And the most important players are some of these elected officials. Now, do we like them all? Do we agree with them all? That's a different matter. But we must know who they are. And we must know what they stand for. So if I were to ask you, do you like the way Mayor Johnson is doing his job? Well, he's only been at it, like 8 or 9 months. So it's hard, maybe a little early to say I like Mayor Johnson or not, but I should be able to get you to tell me if you like President Biden or Senator Duckworth, or, you know what I'm saying? You should have an opinion on those people. And eventually you should have an opinion on your mayor. I mean, not everyone obviously lives in the city of Chicago, right? So you got to know these things. Okay. Super important. Group 2, please.
We had a knowledge of humanity, knowledge of history, specifically the negative things and how not to repeat those things or to use what worked in a new way, knowledge of the law and how it works.
Yes.
And if you change something, who that affects and so forth. And then they definitely have to be a team player, which takes trust, but they can't be naive at the same time. Someone who's responsible and someone who's aware of current affairs.
Wow, awesome. I'm going to pick on knowledge of the law. So how does a law get made? How do laws get changed? This is, again, something that the change maker needs to know. You know, in the city of Chicago, we have a city council. You gotta have a little concept of how that works. When do they meet? That kind of thing, how a bill becomes law. You know, at the state level, we have a state government that works a little differently. They meet on a different timetable. The thoughtful leader is going to be aware they don't have to be an expert in every aspect of all that, but they're going to know a little bit about all that. They're going to know a little bit about how the laws become made in this country. That's super important. I'm glad you guys picked up on that. And of course, the law itself, not just how to make a law, but like, when do you break the law? What are your rights? I think when I hear law, I also hear knowledge of your rights. Don't get chumped. What are your rights as a person in America? You have rights. And a lot of times we don't know them. And so to know your rights is part of what I hear when I hear the law. And finally, group one, please. Group one. What do you got?
So for group one, we said that they should be a critical thinker, open-minded, not only self-aware, but also socially aware of things that are going on around them.
Oh.
Decisive, being able to make hard decisions, especially like on the fly. Organizational skills, like planning skills. And then being able to network well, but also build onto those relationships in the future.
Wow.
Be logical, but also having like quantitative evidence to back up what they're saying. And then good judgment.
Oh, these are so good ones. Great judgment. But like we said, being a person of character. So I like the I'm gonna land on this planner and organizer. So there are ways that we can be good planners and organizers. And I teach organizing. If we had more time together, I would give us a class on the basics of community organizing, because it is a discipline. We do study it. There are ways and practices to be a good organizer. In other words, a small example of that is how to have a meeting. So who here has ever chaired a meeting? Chaired a meeting? No? So if we had more time, I would ask Anthony perhaps what that meeting was. How did it get organized? What was the agenda like, right? A lot of times there's a lot of work that goes before the meeting ever happens. Before people come together in the meeting hall or the place of assembly, some people have gotten together and thought carefully, like, well, what should there be food? What should go first? Who should speak when? Do we have handouts? You know, are we using flip charts? You know, whatever, all those aspects. How long shall the meeting go? How do we involve people? You know, we have small groups, all those things. And it shouldn't last forever, right? We don't want to bore people to death. We want to get to an end, right? So if you've had a good meeting, you kind of know what I'm talking about. All that is part of being a good organizer. A good organizer will have a great meeting and make people want to come to the next one. They don't want to come to Anthony's meeting and be bored to tears. It's like, I'm never going to your meetings, dude. Your meetings suck. I'm never coming to your meetings. That's not good. I mean, Anthony could have a lot of heart and have an important issue that he needs to have discussed. But without that thought, without that sort of muscle building of thinking about how the meeting will work for everybody, we're not going to get where we need to go. And part of that is to have an evaluation. So after all of our meetings that were in this space, Anthony and his leaders and his co-conspirators will get together before everyone leaves for that night, and they'll say what went right, what went wrong. And someone will say, Anthony, you spoke too much. Or Anthony, you were right on point. It was excellent. Those 3 things that you hit were perfect. Don't ever change that, or whatever. And they'll say, hey, Tom, you spoke up. You never spoke before, but Tom, you did a good job tonight. Good on you, brother. Nice job. We want you to say something for the next meeting. So all that's going to happen inside the space of the evaluation, you know, maybe 15, 20 minutes. And then everybody goes home and they know that they did a good job and they know where they can improve if needed. Okay, wonderful. We're running a little over late, so I'm going to just say for now, thank you so much, everybody. Next session is civic muscle. And what I'm going to do is feed back to you the results of the survey in which you all disclosed the kinds of civic things you have done. And we're going to take some time to look at that and see what things have we done as a group in this civic world, and maybe people will share examples, and so we can learn from each other. And then we'll head towards our final class in 2 weeks when you control the situation. All right, my friends. Thank you so much. Time flows by when you're having fun. Have a good rest of your week. I'll see you next Thursday for session number.
Thank you.
Thank you.